Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Thank you for joining me for folks' favorite Fandom Friday. Now, every Friday for 14 weeks now, I've had the privilege of visiting with folks from the wider world of the Tolkien fandom. Writers, musicians, artists, craftsmen, scholars, content creators, and a whole lot more. Today, we welcome a friend to today's Tolkien Times. He's the longtime chair of the Tolkien Society, having served in that role for a decade now. He's a contributor to their journals Amon Hen and Malorn, and is an administrator for the always useful Tolkien Gateway website. You may have heard his laugh in episode 136 when Shaun Marchese and I recorded at Tolkien 2019, but you definitely heard him properly last season when he hosted 5 episodes of the PPP with me. Folks, please welcome Shaun Gunner.
Thank you very much for having me, Alan. Good to be here.
Totally my pleasure. Glad to see you again. So you've been asked this for the Prancing Pony podcast, but not here on the TTT. So tell this audience, how and when did you first encounter Middle-earth, and what is it about Tolkien's works that keeps you coming back?
So I actually first encountered Tolkien's works when I was about 7, I think. My dad used to take me to the library every Saturday, and there was the David T. Wenzel's graphic novel version of The Hobbit. And I tell this story because I took it home and I didn't like it. And at that point in my life, I sort of presumed I would never bother with Tolkien ever again.
All right, then.
Until I saw a trailer for the Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring film. And I thought to myself, that looks interesting. And then I read the books, and then the rest is history.
Yeah.
In terms of what keeps me coming back to the books, I mean, obviously now it's almost like a professional job, right? Being the chair of the society, so that keeps me coming back. But for me, it's the astounding creativity of Tolkien. You know, the fact that all of this can come out of the brain of one human being.
Man, I know. It's stunning, isn't it? Yeah.
It's staggering. And actually, although Tolkien, and you know, the word Tolkien-esque is in the dictionary now, even though Tolkien is associated with fantasy, actually his ability to write other types of literature, his work as an academic, I think is fantastic. So that's what kind of keeps me coming back, is almost sheer amazement at his creative skill.
Yeah, I can totally get that. Well, so Shaun, you were the youngest chair of the Tolkien Society when you stepped into that role all the way back in 2013. I want to know what drove you to seek that position, especially at that age, and what's kept you motivated to lead the organization for so long?
So I was one of those people who was, you know, slightly grumpy member.
Was?
Right? I accept that. I accept that. And it was my friend Marion, who was then the membership secretary. She turned around to me and she said, "If you think you're so good, you think you're a bit gobby, as we would say, you join the committee, right? And you get involved."
Yeah.
And, you know, usually I think you say it to people and they walk off. And I actually went, you know what, I will.
All right, then, fine. I'll take you up on that. Yeah.
So I then, I very quickly, I became a sort of just a generic volunteer. I then was co-organising our 2012 event.
Oh, yeah.
We did back then. I then became a trustee. I became the publicity officer. And then I became the chair. All of that happened. So from me being a lay member to me being the chair in the space of less than 2 years.
Wow.
So I just went from kind of just being a casual member to being in charge of the organisation in that period of time. It was very rapid.
That is.
What drove me to do it was I could see potential, and that's what keeps me going. I can still see potential in the Tolkien Society. Back then, when I became the chair, we had 650-ish members. We've now got pushing 4,000.
Yeah.
Right. Back then, if I'd said you're going to get to 4,000 members, I would have laughed at you and said it's not possible. We're never going to achieve it.
Yeah.
And I would have been blown away at getting to that kind of number. Now it's vanilla to me. Now I'm like 5,000, 6,000, 10,000. You just keep going. Yeah. And we now what the membership enables us to do. Not only are we better achieving our charitable aims, but it's also the finances, because it means that we can do better and bigger things, such as our long-term aim for a Tolkien Centre.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be fantastic. So, speaking of all the things that the Tolkien Society does, Oxonmoot's a big one. This episode airs on the Friday when the 50th Oxonmoot is taking place, both online and in person in Oxford. Now, that online element is fairly new, and it dates back to 2020 during the COVID pandemic when everything had to be online, including that year's Oxonmoot. What has this added dimension brought to the Tolkien Society, specifically events, and how has it benefited these last few Oxonmoots?
So, I mean, there's some amount of logistical challenge it does bring.
Yeah, having done a hybrid moot myself, I can certainly see that, yes.
But aside from that, what it means is we're able to quite cost effectively give people the ability to access an Oxonmoot-ish experience. I'm not going to pretend that being online is the same experience as being in person. No. It isn't. But to be fair, lots of aspects of it are a pretty good replica of the real life experience.
And it's a whole lot more affordable too. Yeah.
A hell of a lot more affordable. So the fact that aside from COVID, because we think the world seems to have just moved on from that now.
Yeah, that's true.
We are now getting 200, 300, 400 people coming along virtually every year to Oxonmoot who probably would not have done otherwise.
Yeah.
This Oxonmoot, we're going to have 350 people there in person. We're going to have a similar number to that joining online. That is extra people that would never have been there and been able to experience Tolkien in that way. What it also means is we're able to benefit from them. So they're able to benefit by seeing what's going on in Oxford and sharing their experiences. Actually, those of us in Oxford are able to hear from speakers around the globe that we otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to experience at Oxonmoot.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, if they can't make it all the way to Oxford that time of year, how are you going to get them there to speak? No, well, you just do it hybrid. Yeah,
exactly. So when I first joined the society, which was actually in 2005, Oxonmoot felt a very British event, right? And I don't mean it was organised by Brits, because it still kind of fundamentally is,
right.
But more that the attendances were all British. Everybody there was British, right? Apart from a few long-standing, and you've probably met some of them, Alan, Dutch and German people that come every year. But apart from that,
I'm picturing exactly in my head who I know you're talking about. Yeah,
but Oxonmoot doesn't feel like that now.
No,
it feels a much more international, global event. And actually, what the online experience has done is it's brought Oxonmoot and it's brought the Tolkien Society to the world and brought the world to us. And I think, there was a lot of questions back in 2000 when we first did that online Oxonmoot, whether we would continue this. And I was very quick to say at the time, we will never take this option away. And I was very consistent right off the bat.
I remember you said that. And I thought, I don't know, man, this is pretty hard. And but you did it. Yeah.
And now we've actually invested thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds in the tech to make sure that we can continue it. We will be continuing it. Where we continue to learn. It still is a learning experience, I think, for all of us, particularly how do you make sure that those people in person and virtually interact with one another? That's still one of the biggest challenges, that sometimes it can look like it's two events that share the same name.
Parallel. Yeah,
but they're running in parallel. Yeah. And I was like,
that has been a challenge. That was a challenge for our event at PPP Moot. It's a challenge, I think, for Signum University's Myth Moot. It is something that each organization seems to tackle differently, and yet there's always little bits and pieces that are, like you said, a challenge.
So that's the one that, if there's something that bothers me, that's the one that bothers me.
Yeah.
However, we have had over the last couple of years consistently good feedback about how we've run the events. So we will continue to learn. If anybody's got any great ideas, do let me know. I'm always open to them.
Yeah. Well, folks, like I said, this episode airs on the Friday of Oxonmoot. So, those of you, especially in the U.S., you still have plenty of time to take part. So if you're not already registered as a digital attendee, Shaun, where do they go? Oxonmoot.org?
Oxonmoot.org.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you there. Shaun, as the chair of the Tolkien Society, you have seen a lot of changes in the fandom over the last decade. This is an interesting question. What is the biggest challenge currently facing the greater Tolkien community right now? And how do you see the Tolkien Society helping to address that challenge?
Yeah, I've thought about this question quite a bit. Folks, just to let you know, he He tells
Yeah,
me the questions.
I did let you know ahead of time. This is not a question where you can hem and haw for about 90 seconds while you chew it on the, think about it, right?
No, I've given this quite a lot of thought, and actually, this is a challenging question, right?
Yeah.
So there are a couple of things about the challenges facing the fandom that some of us are not kind of willing to address, or not. So one of them, there is a fracturing. Or it may be the case that we're just aware of the fractures more than we were before because of social media.
Yeah.
But we are aware, but nonetheless, we are aware of it, right? Which is that there clearly are people who've got very diametrically opposed views. And I don't just mean political, but they just see Tolkien's works differently, right? So that's a real challenge. And in particular, one of the challenges the Tolkien Society faces is how do you make all of those people feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Right? So how do you make people feel comfortable when they want to discuss the Christian influences on the Lord of the Rings and the Christian interpretations of the Lord of the Rings? They can sometimes, I'm not saying all, just to be clear, I'm not saying everybody feels in this country, but some of those people can feel quite uncomfortable about seminars like our Tolkien and Diversity one, and vice versa, right? These two groups are seeing Tolkien's works in very different ways. Both of them are legitimate in their own rights.
Yeah.
But sometimes, and we've all seen this, there can be friction there.
Yeah.
Even amongst well-known Tolkien scholars, there's friction in some of these interpretations.
That is true.
How do we ensure that actually we're able to hold that community together and make sure everybody feels welcomed and included? I think that's a real challenge, and
that is a challenge. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And if I'm honest, I'm not sure the Tolkien Society's always got it right on this one. Like we're definitely learning this. This is again, it's a consequence of us becoming a bigger organisation, right? We're encountering perspectives and people that the society hadn't in the past. That's a good thing for me, for us, for the organisation.
I think so.
But it does mean that we need to think more carefully about how do we ensure people are included.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is a real challenge for the fandom, and this sometimes gets forgotten about as well, we have a lot of adaptations of Tolkien now. A lot of adaptations of Tolkien. So, you roll the clock back. If I was the chair 25 years ago, we pretty much just had a BBC radio series, an animated film that everybody kind of forgot about, right? That was it.
For good reason, yes.
For good reason, right? We've now got 2 film trilogies. We've got more films coming. We've got a TV series. We've got 4 more seasons coming. We've had endless games, and we've got loads more games coming that we know about.
Right.
How do we ensure that the people who come to Tolkien through those adaptations understand that sometimes those adaptations are not Tolkien?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see this quite a bit, this almost casual, and sometimes it is just accidental, sometimes it's just for fun, but not necessarily people always appreciating that these two things are different. And actually, the Tolkien Society has a very clear educational role in explaining those things. And again, I don't want this to sound like it's antagonistic towards adaptations. It's not.
No, I was going to say the Tolkien Society has become a lot more, I think, at least from my perspective, more open to, celebrating and discussing the adaptations, but as adaptations. Yeah.
As adaptations, and last year's Oxonmoot, we obviously had Ramsey Avery from The Rings of Power join us. We've had video in the past from Peter Jackson at our 2012 event. We've had Alan Lee speak to us about working on the films. It's not, there's no sense of antagonism.
No.
But at the same time, there does have to be appreciation that the author and what the author wrote isn't necessarily what we see on screen.
True.
Or hear. And the society has got a very clear educational role in making sure that people understand those differences. Because what I'd be really worried about is you imagine in 50 years' time, The Lord of the Rings has fallen out of copyright, right? And we've had no end of adaptations by that point.
Oh, yeah, you're not kidding.
Now, you take other authors where they've fallen out of copyright, right? How many people have seen an Alice in Wonderland film? Everyone's seen them, right? How many people have read Alice in Wonderland? Very, very few. How many people have read Charles Dickens' works, or even Shakespeare's plays? You know, it's actually not that many people in comparison to who see the adaptations. Now, that's not a problem per se, but you can see how the author's legacy actually becomes how people see those films, as opposed to what
the adaptations themselves. While they don't replace the writings, they do tend to supersede the writings in people's heads. You know, the visions of what the writing might be. And that's
the point that I'm very keen to kind of make sure the society has a role in playing that. And like I say, that there's no sense of antagonism or opposition to, you know, and I say that as someone who was a big fan of the Lord of the Rings films. You know, I've got mixed views. I think it's fair to say on the Rings of Power, things I like, some things I don't.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to adaptations at all. I just want to see them done well. But yeah, I think these are the main challenges facing us. You know, that kind of fragmentation and that sense of, can we make everybody feel included, and the legacy of the author, and the author,
which is specifically tied to the foundation or the existence of the Tolkien Society itself, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Our educational purpose under the law of the UK is to promote research into and educate the public in the life and works of J.R.R. Tolkien. So that's our job. That's the job that I think that we do well, and we will continue to do.
Good.
And I think the Tolkien Society is well placed to face up to those challenges. I'm not saying they're going to be easy.
No.
But that's what keeps me going, Alan, is wanting to face up to these challenges and keep doing the right thing.
Good. Well, I'm glad. Shaun, where can people find you and follow you on social media, as well as the Tolkien Society?
So the best place to follow me would be on Twitter, which is @Shaun Gunner. That's SHAUN, not SHAWN, for some other
SEAN for that matter.
Yeah, Shaun Gunner. You can find me on Twitter. That's the best place to find me. And of course, you can follow the Tolkien Society on all forms of social media. We're everywhere.
Yep, absolutely. Well, folks, that is it for today's Fandom Friday, but be sure to come back next week to meet another of your fellow Tolkien fans and maybe even learn what niches of the community you might be interested in exploring. And if you're interested in joining me here on today's Tolkien Times for a future Fandom Friday, let me know by emailing barlin@theprancingponypodcast.com. So, hey, the Patreon for today's Tolkien Times launched just a little shy of 2 weeks ago now. Please consider supporting the TTT as I work to make it your best source for high-quality daily Tolkien content. You can get things like an ad-free feed, a hangout with me and the other patrons, priority for mailbag and readings, and even a bonus episode every single week. So go to patreon.com/Tolkien Times and sign up today. And please join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times as we wrap up the week with Silmarillion Saturday. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow or subscribe in your podcast apps. Follow @Tolkien Times on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And finally, in the words of Faramir, go with the goodwill of all good men.